Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome again to another Sabbath Insight. I am, of course, Chief Yuya, the Chief Jegna of the ANU Nation. And I want to get right into today's subject. We're dealing with silkiness, or what I refer to as the silk soul or the silky soul. And what we're getting into is what we would call webs of truth, myths, and the seed of being, and looking at the web of your soul, trying to really see it not so much as a trap, but as a interwoven design of your own destiny. I want to look into the Kra a little bit with you, from Makan cosmology. And to explore some of this, we're going to sort of look at some of the, I guess, early mythology or folktale that we have to uncover and really understand why sometimes religious systems aren't based in truth, but they're based in fear programming. And I want to explain some of that through, I guess we could say how words are webbed and weaved together. So let's start with Anansi. We're going to take you to the west, or west of Kibalan, or West Nubia. Anansi is the spider, or the weaver, or the original coder, I'll say. And Anansi doesn't just tell stories, but Anansi is an energy or a concept that writes code into our minds. And that code is given in the form of myth, memories, morals, and so forth. So why am I bringing up Anansi, right? Why is Anansi so powerful in terms of what we're talking about? And it's because Anansi teaches us how the mind works. Words become beliefs, and then the beliefs eventually become laws. And soon we're entangled a lot of times inside of a story that we inherited, but not a story that we authored. So we always need to look at ourselves and sort of ask the question, whose web are we in? Some stories are spun to free us, and then some stories are spun to trap us into shame and silence and submission. Um, so there are codes that can be inherited, myths sometimes that are given but not chosen. So I want to talk about one of the deepest webs, we'll call it. You know, you can you can only learn truth from the book given to you by your captor. Right? That's one of the myths that many of us are functioning under, and that's a myth that those of us melanin rich in America, many are still entangled in. Reading, living, and dying by a book whose origin you've never questioned, a language that you've never spoken, a cultural context that you've never known. That book does hold truth, yes, but truth becomes bondage when it's removed from culture, context, and command. So, how do you know what's true if you never knew who wrote it, right? That's one web that I want to, kind of question and hope that you can take a look at. But I also would speak about the colorism of divinity, or what I often call the holy hue, the fair skinned, blue eyed, golden haired image of the Savior, worshiping your opposite while fearing your reflection. That's not just, iconography. It's psychological warfare. When the image of divinity looks like your oppressor, then you start to believe that your salvation does too. And so you disown your own divinity, your nose, your skin, your hair, uh, your tone of voice, everything becomes less than. And every righteous soul you imagine wears robes of white, but they never wear skins of brown. So Anansi is a sort of kind of energy that sees this and laughs in a way, because now Anansi knows the power of a story. Wow, you've believed that. So Anansi known that if you can change the image, you can change in the internal narrative. If you can change the internal narrative, you can begin to untangle the web, right? I would say another myth or web that we can look at is the nuclear family versus the spiritual nationhood. That's another trap. The idea that family begins and ends with those who you share blood. We're taught to die and yeah, for mama and them. But we're never trained to build with a spiritual nation. We forget the ancient model of Abusua. Abusua is the matrilineal clan, and in Toro is the spiritual bloodline. I shared some of this today in the Facebook group, the ANU Life Global Village group. So your true family is anyone assigned to your soul mission. That's your family. So while you may love your relatives, it's always, I would say, important to understand that covenant always trumps kin, and assignment outranks ancestry, so that's sort of a or some webs, I guess we can look at in a way. But I want to go back to Anansi, of course. Anansi doesn't necessarily destroy any webs. Anansi rewrites the webs. So Anansi teaches you to debug the belief system. A question from Anansi would be like, who gave you that script? Did you audit the code? Before you decided that you want to live by it. And if your soul didn't write that code, why do you follow it? Right? We've been deprogrammed out of even coming close to asking questions like that, to exploring like that. In our Akan understanding, we have the Kra, and every person is born with a Kra. This is a divine spark, or what we'll say is the Most High's blueprint that exists just for you. It's your blueprint. It's not your personality. It's not your body. Um, it's not even your spirit. It is like an internal command center, if you will. It's a signature that you're given in Shemayim, or in the heavens. It chooses your name. It chooses your rhythm. It chooses your work. And all of this is done before your feet touch soil. So your cry remembers what your mind forgets. And most, I mean, none, religious systems ever teach you to access it. They'll tell you to obey a book. They will definitely tell you to fear the punishment that you'll receive. Uh, they'll tell you to seek forgiveness. They'll tell you to even chase after favor. But the cry never begs. The cry never grovels. The cry knows. So to live without knowing your cry is like, it's like owning land but never planting a seed. So you're walking around all the time on this fertile soil, and yet you still starve. So we could look at, because we're looking at spiritual technology. Let's go to ancient Kemet for a moment, or older Kemet. The soul blueprint that parallels the Kra in ancient Kemet was called the Ka. And the Ka was considered to be your divine twin. It was your other self that existed in the spiritual dimension. And that divine twin was supposed to be the guide for your material self, right? So the Ka is to Kemet what the Kra is to the Akan. Both are considered to be the divine intent, or the file, we'll say, that Yahuwah uploads into your being before birth. And of course, if you've ever followed any of my or listened to any of my teachings on Yoruba tradition, or more so Yoruba sciences, then you'll recognize another name for this that sounds familiar: your Ori, right? And of course, the Ori is your inner head. It's your spiritual director. It's the part of you that you selected, or that selected your destiny before you even entered the world. So the Kra travels from Inyame, in the heavens. And then you have your Ka that emanates from Ra, returning to the field of divine judgment. And then you have your Ori that is chosen from the pre-existence realm, which is witnessed by Oludumare and of course, Orumila, the witness to destiny. So you have three different languages, three different tongues, three different rivers, right? But they're all going into one current. Now, if we look in Hebraic texts or Torah, we have the concept of the neshama. And the neshama is the breath, similar to the emi, that Yah places within man, right? So if you look at, for instance, like Job 32 and 8, Job 32 and 8, he says, but there is a spirit in man, and the spirit of the Almighty gives them understanding. That parallels something that I shared a while ago, where I spoke about the Ruach HaKodesh is not about like we make it super mystical, like Most High breathed the breath of life into man, man became a living soul. It's all this sort of unseen spookism. When you really break down the term Ruach, I mean, first of all, it speaks about connectedness, brotherhood. So it's that breath connects those who are following that same head. But in other meanings, it's wisdom. So it is the wisdom and the instruction that makes one a living soul, right? And I'll break that down another time. But if you look at the book of Job or Job, you see that right there. You see what's being said. Like it's that breath of the Almighty that provides understanding. So the breath is not just oxygen. Like now I'm breathing. The breath itself is insight. It's the instruction. It's the kra. In the Quran, you look at 32:9, Surah Sajjah, and it said, "Then he fashioned him, and he breathed into him of his spirit." So that breath was called the ruhi. And that ruhi or the ruhi, it's a divine signature that's put into a person. It's that appointment. Now you have this inner assignment. We call that the kun fayakun, which is to be, and it is. So now when you look across these various systems, you start to have to come to certain things. You're not just flesh. You are a downloaded divine instruction, right? But if no one ever teaches you that, and no one, more importantly, if no one ever teaches you how to access that file, because that's what we're talking about, if no one ever teaches you how to decode the cry, then you'll spend your entire life debugging someone else's virus and you'll call it holiness, right? So there are silky truths, we'll say, and there's silky lies. And sometimes the myths that one kind of follows and goes through, they become a cage. So, just to call it, what it is, there's many religious teachings passed down to us that are just tools of spiritual bondage at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day. They tell us what to believe. They tell us what to fear. They tell us what to worship. They tell us what to obey. But your cry, your essence, your soul essence already knows. That doesn't mean that you already know. I know a lot of people will use that as a cop out for self idolatry. Yeah, Chief, I felt like I already knew. You didn't. Because one who already knows doesn't profess things like that. And I know I always have to say that because it is irritating. I'm not going to lie. So I'm not just going to try to say it like, it's irritating. You know, when you see people always want to skip the line. Yeah, that's why I don't study all of that, because I knew you didn't know. Because people who know don't talk like that. So you didn't know. People who know that they don't know. People who know are always open to knowing. People who know are never stuck in the need for affirmation or confirmation of what it is that I think I might know. Because here's the truth about it. People who know don't know that they know. People who end up knowing find out that they know by somebody else who knows more, who lets them know that, yes, you do know. That's how people who actually know move. You see, I've given this example before and I'll share it again. When I received my first black belt, right, in a martial science in the system I was studying, I didn't think I deserved a black belt. I really didn't. I didn't think I was at that level. And I remember it was a good brother of mine. Some have heard the story before, but I think it was an important one, especially when I think back at the ages. Sometimes, as you get older and you think back, it's almost like watching old videos of Tupac Shakur. And it's hard to realize or remember, man, he was a baby. This dude died at 25, 26 years old. But you listen to some of these interviews and it's like he was really sharing some very profound insights for such a young person. Even Bob Marley, these people, Bob Marley, Jimi Hendrix, Malcolm X, these people died at very young ages. Um, so I think back at some of the wisdom, this is many years ago, many years ago, a lifetime ago, I could even say. And he said, I remember he came up to me and he was like, "You don't think you deserve it, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, I know." He was like, "That's one of the reasons why you do deserve it." He was like, through and through. He was like, "Yeah, you are a black belt." He's like, "You've been a black belt, actually. You could have gotten your belt before." He was like, "But absolutely." He was like, that's fine that you feel that way. That's your humility. You're still very open to learning. Because I felt like I don't know anything. Now, I was teaching people at that point. I had, I was training up the young the ones coming behind me, the lower belts, the lower ranks, but I still felt like I don't know anything. You know, um, that's someone who knows. And I'm only applying that to martial arts. I'm not saying like I'm the knower. I'm just applying that to one space. Um, when you do all that professing, when you got to tell people that you're empathic, when you have to tell people that, I'm a priest, I'm a priestess, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm in touch with the spirit world. When you do all of that, that's a immediate red flag for those of us who really are that. We look over like, okay, we know what you are. Now, for those who have a lower vibration, they believe that crap. I'll get into why they believe that. They were put here to believe you. So that's who you're going for. But those of us who know better, we see nothing, right? So when I say your crowd already knows, I want you to take a moment to kind of look at it, the spiritual technology of what I'm saying. You can look at that within examples of Bantu tongues, right? Inyami. Now, that's the Zambezi River archetype. It's considered to be a serpent, Elohim, and it's associated with divine flow. That's Inyami. Then you have Nzambi or Inyambe and Zambe. These are all terms that mean the Most High or can be transliterated into the divine spirit of the Most High across Zambia, Congo, and Central West Africa. So I remember speaking to one brother, and he was even telling me that, I was on a continent. He was like, "Yeah, Zambia is a name that comes from Nzambi and Z, which means the Most High or the Creator's River." So you'll see that there are different linguistic fingerprints that point you home. They don't point you to Europe. They don't point you to Rome, but they point you to the source. So they even resonate, I would say, with ancient Kemetic names like Amun, Ka, Kra. And this shows you that the soul itself has always been central to a Kibalionic or African or Nubian cosmology. But we were taught to fear a devil with a pitchfork instead of decoding what the serpent actually is. That Amen or Amen, however it's said, comes from Greek liturgy instead of Nzame and Zimba and Zambe. That the Ka itself, we were taught, was separate from the soul. When in Akan and in Kemet, the Ka and the Kra are working complements and they serve as the spiritual clothing of the soul. So those are not just accidents. Those are the silky lies. Religions taught us that we're cursed and that our DNA is cursed, but really our DNA and our history and our language itself tells us that we are the sovereign descendants of divine builders. You have the Bantu connection to Kemet, and that's very clear when you look at King Tutankhamun, or commonly known as King Tut. When they did a DNA trace on him, his DNA traced to tropical West Africa and as well as Central Africa. When you look at the uh, Bamileke and the Bamoun tribes of Cameroon, right? They're very interesting because they preserved a lot of that ziggurat, or that pyramidal sort of symbology, and the same exact priesthood systems and of ancient Kemet. They even said that they came from ancient Kemet. They had the origins. Then you have the which I thought was always interesting, the Mangbetu, and they're known for not only harp instruments, but also they have the elongated skulls. That's the elongated skull that you often see with the Amun Ra aesthetic. That back long, elongated skull. So you start to see that these are remnants, right? There's a spiritual technology. I wouldn't even say they're remnants. I would say they're remembrances. There's a spiritual technology that was encoded genetically. So even though there may be a scattering, there's a genetic and linguistic and spiritual technology that all aligns with truth. And for those of us who now are in this time, we are being called to untangle the lies and to reweave the web with precision, right? Because it could be a very fragile web to untangle. When you look at Inyame and the Akan tradition, Inyame being, of course, that supreme archetype in the Akan cosmology, you have the root in Yah, and it means to obtain, or it means to receive, or to get. And then you have Me, and you'll see Me in a lot of West African languages, and it refers to me. Sometimes you see it as MI or ME, me, like in English, and it refers to the presence or the essence of me. Like in the Yoruba, where you have Omi, which we say is water, but Omi is the spirit of my essence, or the spirit of my presence, or the calling of myself is Omi, right? So so you have Inyame. Well, you often say me, but it could be Inyami, right? But Inyame becomes the one from whom I can receive life, or we receive life, or the giver of myself, right? These are just quick translations I'm giving you. So Inyame is a transcendental sort of concept, and it's hidden. It's not carved in stone. Inyame is only assessed through the Kra. So what is the Kra? The Kra is divine remembrance. So it's not through fear. You're not going to remember anything if you're afraid. It's not even through doctrine, right? So if you look at Inyame in this light, Inyame aligns seamlessly with Yahuwah, the sacred name of the Most High in Hebrew. Well, yeah, one of the names, because really it would be El Elyon. But El Elyon, or Yahuwah, then declares, I am that I am. So Yahuwah, who reveals himself in power, but then dwells in dark. Yah, who forms the neshama, or the breath of divine understanding, right? Then you have, even in like symbology, or epithet, you have the jinyame or the onyame. And the jinyame, it translated, if you see the symbol, that except for the creator, or the except for Nyame, or none exists except the divine most high. it's a symbol of total sovereignty. It's not just poetry, like a lot of people out here use it. It means that there's no priest, no prophet, no king, no ancestor that rules existence over Inyame. So there's an extended form I've seen a lot of times, like at shrines and, well, more so buildings and shrines, when I'm on the continent, and it's O Inyame Nahim. And when you see that hin, like Omahim, it means, but just that phrase, Onyami or Jinyami Nahim, it means that Inyame is king. Sometimes you'll see Onyame Beboa, it means the Most High will help, right? So you start to see that Inyame itself is unknowable in form, but knowable through rhythm, knowable through law, and knowable through inner guidance. Just as Yahuwah is too holy to truly be seen, but yet speaks through wonders and signs and the Ruach, the spirit. Inyame and Yah are not foreign to one another. They are two dialects, I would say, of the same breath, right? Now we can jump back over to Kemet again, in the Abrahamic community in Kemet. And Amun, Kemet, you had Amun, and Amun meant the hidden one, or that which is incomprehensible. And Amun was also called Amun Ra. And Amun Ra means the hidden and the revealed, or it can be translated as that, right? And that echoes how you read about Yahuwah in the Torah. No man can see my face. That's Exodus 33 and 20. And you look at how Allah is named in the Quran. If you look at the term Al-Ghaib means the unseen, right? So now think about this every time you say, for those of you who say Amen after you pray or whatever, Amen means to seal. It's a sealing. Like, how you take a seal back in the days, or even today, you have a raised seal, or they would take wax and they would make a seal. It's a sealing of your spirit with Amun, the hidden one. So Amun becomes Amen through the Greek and the Latin, liturgy. And Amen becomes the universal full stop, as we say in some places, or the universal period. Da 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 da, period. Because even in your Hebraic, the word aman means to confirm or to trust or even to support. So it's an act of getting in alignment more than just an agreement. People say like, amen, amen. They're agreeing with what you're saying usually, like when you have the amen corner. But aman or amun is it snaps things into alignment. It seals it. Okay, it's locked in. So if you were to look at maybe what some of these different names they can teach us, they teach us that across a Kibbalonic spirituality, it was never about idols for the higher spirituality. The lower ones, you still got idols, right? But it was never about idols or appearances, but rather about essence. When you look at Inyami, the one who we receive from, or Jinyami, nothing supersedes the divine, or Yahuwah, I am that which I am manifesting. I manifest in power. Or Amun, I am the hidden source behind all light. Or Amen, even I am the soul's confirmation of that which it already knows. This is why in ANU, we don't pray, we affirm. You always hear me say affirm. We affirm because we're sealing it in with Amun. We already know this is what it is. If we're asking for something, or if we're seeking for something, it's going to be aligned with the law already of the Creator. So we're affirming if we are operating and we are those who are called to turn our heads and turn our ways, we're affirming that, right? But again, looking at those names, you start to realize that the names are not separate. They're the same breath carried just on different winds, right? So there's one source, one rhythm, one remembrance, and your kra or your ka is how you remember the sound. You see? So now I know someone listening might say, well, what about Exodus 33 and 11? Right? Exodus 33 and 11 says that Moses spake with Yah face to face as a man speaks with his friend. But then later in Exodus 33:20, it says that you cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live. Musa, Moses, Moshe, Mosiah was not what you think he was. I'm going to get into that one day with you. But pay attention when the Most High was speaking to Musa about his relationship with Aaron. And he said, I will make you. And then when it was referenced later with Musa and Pharaoh, and he said, I will make you an Elohim to him, and he will speak. He will be your mouthpiece. We'll get into it another time, but there's something deeper there than you might realize. There's something deeper than what you might realize. And the question that you can play around with was Moses a man or a god? Okay, so, but let's look at those two scriptures. Was it a contradiction? No, it's a revelation. Mosiah didn't see Yahuwah's essence in the same way that we may think of it. He saw Yahuwah's expression. So he communed with the emanation, not necessarily the essence. What Musa experienced was the voice, the presence, the glory. But did Mosiah experience the infinite face of the source? In Hebraic sort of thinking, the face represents intimate knowing, while the back or the glory is the manifestation left behind, like it's the trait, like a shadow almost. So with Amun, the hidden one, even in commit, and with Inyami, who is known through the Kra, not a carved image made out of wood or stone, this is not necessarily a contradiction. It's just a reminder that the divine exists within layers. You can speak to the Most High. You can feel the Most High for some. You can even walk in alignment with the Most High. But for some, to try to see the face of Yahuwah or reduce Yahuwah even to an image is to lose the very mystery that makes Yah holy. I know what you're saying, but I thought we were made in Yah's image. Some of us were. The closer you start to come to Yah, the more you walk by vision and not so much by sight. It was a song like that. We walk by faith and not by sight, I think. Yeah, something like that. We walk by faith and, well, that's the scripture, but there was a song, some old gospel song. But you walk by vision. And vision is manifesting itself through your first eye vision or your brow chakra. It's a different sort of experience. But we'll get into the Musa thing, because that's a part of the direction I need to take you all, because we're at that time now. But even looking at those names a little bit, if we look at Inyame, if we look at Amun, there's a meaning there, supreme being, source of all, the hidden one, unseen creative force, visibly, neither can be seen or fully comprehended. So that, Amun was considered to be invisible and the ineffable presence. So there's the role that Inyami does is assigns a Kra or soul essence. Amun assigns a Ka and a Ba. So we access the Kra through ancestral law and morality. We access the Ka through the laws of Ma'at and ancestral order, right? You have the seal of affirmations, Jinyami, only Yah. Then you have Amun, so be it, right? So they even have similar seals. If you look at that, if again, if you're comparing the two to each other. Now, I want to compare your soul for a second to a website. If we could take it a little further, and it might be easier for some to relate. If your cry or your soul essence is not just personal, but is part of a larger spiritual web stretching from Kemet to Cameroon, from the Congo to the Carolinas. In ancient Kemet, they called it the Ka, the vital spark, we'll say. And in Akan, it was called the Kra, the divine essence breathed into you by Inyame. And those are not just linguistic accidents, but rather coincidence, because across the continent, we see this, again, continuity of spiritual technologies, and I shared that before, just to kind of reiterate, the Bamileke and the Bamun and Kemera, how they trace their lineage to Kemet, and they preserve the kingship structures and the pyramidal structures, and even the way they deal with the chiefs and the higher rank, or how I spoke about the Mangbetu. They're out of the Congo, and they practice that cranial elongation, and the harps that they use were like identical to the ones that the kings in Kemet were buried with, right? Those are all receipts. I spoke about how King Tut Amin's DNA is found in the Great Lakes region, and that shows that the roots of the Nile are actually anchored deep in foreign lands. The names of the Most High, Inyambe, Inyami, Nzambi, Nzame, that appears in almost every Bantu speaking region from Equatorial Guinea to Zambia. And then if you look at the elements of the Ka, the Kra, Nzami, and even Anansi, you start to see that these are all modules on your soul's website, if you will. So what if your pyramidal knowledge is stored in your ancestral memory, like site architecture, we'll say, and your Kra is your site's host, your web host, running on this divine server. Your Anansi code is the logic and the storytelling pattern driving your interface. Then you're not just a believer at that point. Then you are a living interface of your lineage. You are a breathing, walking, divine technology. But there's a catch, we'll say. If you install foreign doctrine on a native system, the code crashes. So what would that be like? That would be like if you tried to install iOS on an Android phone, or if you tried to install Android software or Android operating system, you're talking about phones, onto an Apple phone or iPad. It would crash. It wouldn't work. Well, I don't want to get all techy and nerdy, because there's actually a way to do it. But let's just say it will crash. So if you run myths rooted in fear, the soul lags. Like sometimes your computer, it runs slow, and you're like, man, something's up, Marco. I think I've been hacked. Something happened, right? You probably have been hacked. That's why your machine is running slow. If you log into borrowed beliefs, your Kra can't sync with Yahuwah's original blueprint for you. I want you to try to process that for a second. Let's look at how we decode, or I don't want to say decode, clean up or untangle some of that. If we were to sort of bring it all home, you were never meant to be stuck in a web of confusion. You weren't born for that. You were meant to be the weaver, like Anansi. So the difference is whether you're weaving truth or you're weaving entrapment, right? Now, if you want to untangle your web, we have to start with auditing the code you live by. We have to audit it. We have to ask ourselves some of the questions that people hate asking themselves. Who gave me this belief? Right? That's when so many people have issue with. I have even experienced that when people ask me certain questions, or I don't want to say ask questions, but maybe make certain claims about myself, my lifestyle, my family. And I'll say, like I was talking to a sister recently, and we were speaking about polygyny. And I was telling her that I don't have anything I have to explain to anyone. But if you are melanin rich or indigenous and you are not engaged in polygyny, if anyone's got to explain something to anyone, you got to explain yourself to me. I don't have to explain to you why I don't live by the ways of my captors or make their systems and their ways my norm. I don't have to explain that. But you could explain to me why you do, right? So who gave me this belief? Did I receive this belief from Yahuwah, or was it instilled in me by fear? Does this idea bring me closer to freedom to freedom to my cry, or does it keep me locked into spiritual colonization? You know, a lot of times we inherit beliefs that make obedience look like holiness, but what we're really doing is disabling our inner authority. So it's always important to audit the myths that are told to you. You know, like, you are all cursed by birth, all of you. You need a mediator to speak to the creator, and the mediator is more important than the target. The creator looks nothing like you. Even though you were made in its image and you were made in its likeness, meaning you look like it and you act like it. Your ancestors were ignorant and demonic. Uh, your salvation must be proven through outward suffering. Those kind of ideas, like, they're not truths. Those are programs. Those are full, all-out programs. And there's different versions of them. You know, it's like version 2, version 3, version 4. You know, they're not just like a truth, like, you know, my ancestors were ignorant and demonic. I have been told that before by people who I no longer speak to, because you disrespect my ancestors. Like, let's just say I'll stop speaking to you, right? That's not something I tolerate. You can't disrespect. I don't care who you are. You cannot disrespect my ancestors. I was told that once. Well, I wasn't told it. My child was, because of our acknowledgement of Kwanzaa over Christmas, that I was demonic and we were demonic. Yeah. This is said by an old person. You know, that's a program that you think that. You think my ancestors were demons. That's not a truth. That's a program. So we start untangling things by reconnecting to our cry. That's the inner Yah code. The cry isn't far from us. It's not, you don't have to go into a temple to access your cry. You don't even have to crack open a book, to be honest with you, because it's already in you waiting to be activated. You have to speak to it every day. You have to ask your cry to remind you of your purpose all the time. Sit in silence. Wait for the whispers that rise up from your own soul, not that rise up from your social programming. You know, return to the names that match your energetic blueprint. Ya, Inyame, Jinyami, Ori, Ka. You know, don't just talk about being sovereign. Walk like your soul was sent by decree, because it was, right? Your soul does not reflect into you by some sort of accident, you know? when you start to decode the Anansi myth that you're living in, I think some powerful questions you start to ask yourself is, what story am I stuck in? Am I the hero of the story, or am I the hostage of the story? Am I living in a web made by me, or is it a web that's made for me? Remember, Anansi was a trickster, but his real power is in reflection. Anansi always forced people to see what they were believing and whether what they believed made sense or not. And that's your work now. As a Nubians coming forth in this time, you have to rewrite your concept of family, from biological ties to divine assignment. Your idea of what holiness is, from guilt to tuning and alignment. Your purpose, from survival to destiny. You start to clean the website of your soul. If your cry is a website, what is it publishing? Are you broadcasting trauma? Are you broadcasting recycled religious trauma? Are your links broken on the website? Your links are what connect you to people and practices that no longer serve you. Those are broken links. Are you carrying malware? Viruses of shame, self-hatred, fear-based faith. These are the things that slow the site up, that cause it to move slower. And if all of that, or some of it, one of it is even happening, then you need to clear your cache. Unsubscribe from doctrines that teach bondage as salvation. Unfollow ideas that don't resonate with your original design. Delete every mental file that says you are not divine. Because the Creator didn't create you out of fear. The Creator created you to be the image of it. And reflections don't beg. Reflections glow. You ever seen your reflection beg for anything? Or your image of something? No, when you see a child, an infant, infants don't beg. They may cry for some of their communication, but they glow. You see? So when you get to a place where you start to walk in remembrance, once you sort of untangled the web that's been woven, you have to walk with now a new memory, not just the memory of what was done to you, but the memory of what was placed inside of you before what was done ever even happened. You start to remember your ka and your kra and your ori and your soul. You call on Yahuwah, you call on Inyami, you say, these terms, and you mean it. You seal your meditations with the proper words, knowing that you're not just echoing a tradition, thank you, God, for the food we're about to eat. In the name of amen. Right? But you're not just echoing a tradition of doing something, but you're closing a loop of a global soul pattern. It's one of the reasons why I wake up when I do. I wake up and I'm not a dawning person. I am a night person. I'm appreciative and grateful to wake up, but I'm not a person who enjoys the wake up. But I've always gotten up at certain times because I get up when the continent gets up. That's always been my thing. There's a certain soul pattern. I'm not asleep when the continent is up and moving and on the farm weeding and watering and doing what cats do, or hauling the nets in or out fishing. I'm up already. America might be asleep, but America didn't. And when I say America, I don't mean the landmass. I'm saying America as a construct. America didn't give me my loop, or my soul pattern. You start to realize through a lot of this that the web was never meant to trap you. It was meant to teach you how to weave. And that's the key. You gotta weave. You gotta learn how to weave. You gotta bob and weave. A lot of times when I speak to y'all, I give y'all a challenge because keep it going. I would challenge you this strong to audit your myth. Clean the sight of your soul, reconnect with your divine code, and then teach someone else how to break the web. The silky soul, it doesn't snap, it reweaves. So willfully you have a better comprehension of universal spiritual technology after this. I will say that, in kind of sharing some of this information, that a lot of times people have been shaken off and confused because they want me to teach, or they want ANU to teach from one place. And when I say shaken off, like, yeah, I used to listen to him, man, I don't mess with him no more because now he talk about this. Or I had one guy message me once. This was like years and years ago. And he was like, me and my wife love your stuff. And he was like, I was listening to it. And he had just started listening. He's like, I was listening to something. He's like, and all of a sudden you started talking about polygamy. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm not speaking against this. I'm not trying to get racial or anything like this. But the guy was Caucasian, right? And it's like, I didn't say anything. I didn't even respond. Actually, he sent me a message. And I'm like, right? But part of it is also, it's like, we don't have the same background. So why would you assume that where I'm coming from is exactly where you're coming from? We don't even have the same genetic background. We don't have the same ethnic background. So it's just like, if I go to another country and I eat a dish and I enjoy the dish, and then someone privileges me to come into the kitchen and watch them cook, and I see a spice that they're using, and maybe the way they're preparing it, we don't do it that way. They may, mash it with their hands or chew it up in their mouth first, or something like that. Oh, what is that? But you enjoyed the food, right? Well, you're not in your kitchen. You're in someone else's kitchen. So the way you grow and you learn is by keeping yourself open to growing and learning. But like I said, so that's what I mean. Like, a lot of times people have been shaken off because, like, oh, he going in this direction. You don't have any clue what direction I'm going in. I promise you don't. I've told you. It's in the books. If you read the ANU Way, it says division, right? But when people say certain things, I can tell that you still don't have a clue what this is. So when I say shaken off, they want me to teach from one religion, or they want me to teach from one region, even. And in the very beginning, I always made it clear. Go listen to the early podcast. I said it 5 million times for a reason, because I knew that the day would come. And I would always say, I have no allegiance and no loyalty to any spiritual system or religion. I am shackled to the truth. That's it. So if you're a person who was put on this earth only to serve and worship, you feel it, that it's a prime imperative that you box me in. Because some people were brought to this earth, they were placed on this earth to serve the gods. That's their role. They were placed here to serve the gods. So they have to figure out what God you are, or they make the assumption that we are of the same spiritual cloth. They say, you got this cloth is ripped. Half of these people, you are the servants. The other half, it wouldn't even be half, but we'll just say half and half. The other half are placed on the earth to evolve to be better gods than the ones that they descended as. You came to the place as a god, and then you're returning back to be an even better God. Then you have another group, like I said, the half and half. So that you got the God group growing, evolving to better gods. And then you have the worshipers and the servants. And it's like the wheat and the tear because they almost look alike if you don't know what eye to look at them with. So if I start speaking, somebody might think, well, he's a worshiper. I heard you talking about Orisha. And, I don't worship no damn Orisha. I told you that in the beginning. Listen to I told you in the very beginning. 10 years ago, I told you don't pray. Matter of fact, I didn't say don't pray. The name of the segment is Why Pray? I was telling you the whole time. This is what I'm not Nigerian. I said it. Nigerian ain't big enough for me. But you a Bible out. I'm a lot of things. I'm a lot of things. And I would think I was things before I was a Bible out. I have other initiations before I was that. That wasn't my terminal point. I'm not a terminal Bible out. That's it for you. No. No. That's so I could speak to you. And if it was just three people, maybe I went through that to speak to three people, maybe. I don't know. But when you are placed here as a worshiper, there's nothing wrong with that. You feel you got to box this person in. So when I speak to you and I'll say, certain things, they'll say, oh, he's into that Yoruba stuff. He's Yoruba, which I've said makes no sense. It's called Isheshe. It's not Yoruba. Yoruba is a people and a language. Yoruba is not a spiritual system or religion. But they'll say, oh, he's in that Yoruba stuff. Or they'll say, oh, he's one of those Kemetic people. His name is Haru, which I've told you is not a name, it's a title. But again, oh, he's a Hebrew Israelite. He be on YouTube talking about the Bible and Hebrew and Yah. Or some will say he's a Muslim. He said that his name is actually Yusuf, and then he was given the name Yuya, but it's the same name, but his name is Yusuf. And he's always talking about the Quran and this and that. So if you came as a worshiper, then you have to put me in one of these shiny new, because they all new, one of these shiny new religions. But if you're a person who came here to be redeemed as Elohim, then you completely understand what's happening inside of ANU and the mission and why we are and why it's even named ANU Nation. Why did you name it ANU Nation? Some of these things I cannot make some of you see. It's not for you to see. You will never see it. You were placed here and you have less eyes than I do. It's similar to when people hear me speak different languages. I did a song speaking about it called Touch the Land, right? Where in the song I'm speaking Kiswahili, right? And a lot of times when people hear me speak a language, they'll say, where are you from? And like, for instance, the other day, right? I was speaking to a brother and a sister. The sister is Fulani. She's from Senegal. And she's Muslim. So I always greet her with the Muslim greeting whenever I see her. She speaks Wolof as well. She speaks Wolof, French, English. And apparently now she's learning Spanish. I didn't know. So she was speaking to another sister I know who's Dominican. And I heard her like she was teaching her some phrases in Spanish. And no, she's not. I think she's Puerto Rican, actually. I'm bad. But anyway, so she was walking by me and she came to greet me. So I started speaking Spanish to her. And she said, you speak Spanish too? Right? And there was another brother there who's a real cool brother. His family is from Haiti. It's from Spanish. It's from Haiti. So when I started speaking Spanish to her, she was like, oh, you're so sneaky. You speak all these different languages. So she starts speaking French. I don't speak French. I know about maybe just a few words. I never liked French. I don't even like how it sounds, but that's another conversation. I don't really like Spanish that much either. But either way, so the Haitian brother, he says in Creole, she's speaking French, and he's like agreeing, because you can understand some of it. But then he's like, I don't understand. So because I don't speak French, I start speaking Fanti, and I'm mixing Fanti with Hebrew. Right now, we're all in one room together, right? So we all started laughing. So I said, "Look, this is a room of confusion. One person speaking Creole, the other spread." Because he's like, "Well, I know you understand Creole a little bit." I was like, "A little, but just a little. I know a few words and phrases just so that when I'm speaking to someone who speaks Creole, I can show that I'm trying." But my Creole it ain't really saying much. I can point out a few objects here, and I can greet you and have a very limited sort of exchange with you. Um, but we were laughing, and I said, "Look, this is a room full of language confusion. If somebody walked in this room right now, I'm speaking Hebrew and Fanti, she's speaking Wolof and French, and he's speaking Creole, and we were doing it on purpose. So we were just like going straight, knowing that each other couldn't understand. It's like a little game she and I play all the time, you know. So that's an example, right? And I did tell her, I said, I want to learn some French now, and it's for a reason. It's something I'm getting ready to do. And the Haitian brother was like, "Well, you know a little Creole already." I was like, "Yeah, but I need French, you know." But nonetheless, what am I? Right? What the heck am I? Because like she's like, "Where?" I still don't know where you're from, And she, as far as her understanding, I'm a Muslim. Because we that's the language we speak. We were talking actually that day because she wants to make inshallah this September she will go to Mecca, and I was telling her about Mecca. I've been to Mecca, many years ago when I did Hajj, and I was like, yeah, it's so expensive, and we were just talking about like how much it costs now. It's like since the whole medical episode we had some years back, the prices have shot up. I was like, yeah, it'd be like 15 grand, to go do Hajj now, but nonetheless, she swears I'm a Muslim guy, and I'm a Muslim guy from somewhere in West Africa. She's not sure. She's always like, I don't know, either you're Igbo or you're Ashanti. I don't know which one. Of which I am neither. But it's just a game, right? But what am I? I'm a real priest. That's what I am. Now, what does that mean? How could you have a pastor or a bishop who only speaks one language? What kind of garbage is that? On the day of Pentecost, when the Ruach HaKodesh descended, they spoke in tongues. That wasn't a bunch of gobbledygook they were speaking. It wasn't that. They were speaking in the languages of the people who were there. So if I break down the Quran or I break down the Torah to you, and I have to accept the translations in English, often given by heathens, then who is really teaching? Who is really shepherding? Who is really pastoring? The person who gave the translation. That's nonsense. So then all I end up doing is flipping the ideas of an oppressive alien people back to you. That's a web of deception. It's like when people often say, God didn't create Adam and Eve. I mean, God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And that's a defense against, we'll say, alternative sex styles. And that's cute. That's this cute little phrase, but that's not their names. It was Adoma and Hawa. Make a nursery rhyme out of that. Yeah, I don't think it fits the same way. When you're looking at, and someone can say, well, I don't matter. That don't mean that. It means a lot. let's look at it for a second. Adam or Adoma, meaning the earth or the earth being, it correlates to Kim or Cam from Kemet, meaning the fertile essence or the black soil. His name in terms of his genus was Zakar. And Zakar means male or to remember, right? Now, in the Akan, we have Intoro. And Intoro represents the spiritual lineage of the father. Now, if we look at who we call Eve, that was Nekaba. Nekaba means female, but it also means the opener. Now, relate that again to the Akan, you have Abusua. That's in the Akan. Abusua is the matrilineal inheritance that one receives. We also called her Eve, but like I said, that was Hawa. Now, what is Hawa? Life bearer, the one who bears life. Why is that important? Because that correlates to Orset and Kemet. Now, Orset, being the divine mother, meant the restorer of life. Remember, she was the one who restored life to Osir. Then you have the more proper name, we learn in Kabbalah is Adoma Kadmon, Kadmon, Qadmon. That was the primordial soul form of Adoma. Now, when you go to Kemet, you have Atum and Ptah, which was the primordial creative mind and the cosmic architect, which relates to Adoma Kadmon. That gives you a lot more information than Adam and Eve, right? When you're able to speak in tongues and break the language down as a priest, pastor, bishop, deacon, apostle, you can, whatever you want, y'all calling yourselves nowadays, that's what you should be able to do. If I am filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, then I can learn many languages and I can comprehend the spiritual technology that exists across the different nations. That's a real shepherd. That's a real shepherd. So when you hear me, whether it be in a podcast or in a workshop or in these insights, and I'm breaking down different systems and different linguistic nuances across languages, I'm showing and proving one aspect of my role and my position as a shepherd. A shepherd is supposed to be the reflection of the Most High to his people. So what language does the Most High speak? All of them. The Most High is always the smartest person in the room. That means if I am truly called for this role as head Jegna of the ANU Nation, I'm always going to be using more of my brain capacity, spiritual intelligence, and wisdom intelligence than maybe you. I was born with more of it than maybe you because of what I am required to do. So if you can't box me into your mind or your mind's frame, because I would break the frame into pieces. So I just share all that for several reasons. Before you say, oh, he's a con now, you talking about the con. No, I'm not a con. I'm Anu. I know how to find the Anu in Haiti, Ghana, Togo, Ivory Coast, Eritrea, Somalia, Kenya, Korea, Brazil, Cuba, Panama, California, Edmonton, Montreal, St. Kitts, Trinidad, Tobago, Brixton, Berlin, the Carolinas, Detroit. You get what I'm saying? It's about the Anu. And you're going to, if you truly are walking in that as a shepherd. Not all of you were called to be a shepherd. Don't sweat it. Don't even sweat it. I would trade. I would trade. I'm not gonna lie. I would definitely trade. But I love, this is a labor of love for me. But there are some days when, like, yeah, like they say ignorance is bliss. I would be curious to know. what is it like on the other side? Right? But when you are truly called for this, man, and you're working from the ANU perspective, you got to focus on that. So I know for some of you who have, I've heard some of the things lately, like people, say, well, oh, he's into the Bible now. You don't know me. It's like I was reading an article years ago. Robert Glasper was being interviewed, and he was talking about not Branford Marcellus, his brother. Why am I forgetting his name? Wynton Marcellus. And Wynton Marcellus had given like Robert Glasper a pretty harsh critique. And he was talking about how like that wasn't real jazz, and something about like his roots and this and that. Because, Robert Glasper had done gospel work. And he said, he needs to return to his jazz roots and tighten up on that. And then like Robert Glasper was like, I started in the church. The gospel is actually my roots. And then I did jazz. So it's like sometimes when you speak without knowing, you just make a jackass out of yourself. Sometimes it's better just to be quiet or ask or just ask a question. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Shut up. It's a story I told that many years ago. I don't know if y'all remember about the time I was at a Bimbe and somebody was telling me that I didn't do something correctly, and also how I had my lekes. And this woman quoted this text, and she was like, because this says in this text, as it says, and I was like, yeah, I wrote that. I remember her face like it was yesterday. I remember what she had on, her lipstick, everything. And she went across the room. I remember she went across the room and she came back later on and she was like, Baba, now I'm Baba. Baba, you must really think I'm crazy. She's like, I just went over there and I told them what happened and they told me who you are. I didn't know who you were. Oh my God, I must really look stupid right now. And I'm like, no, sir. And my mom like, yep, you sure do. But I was like, nah, sis, it's cool. You didn't know. And that's how we learn. I'm being gracious. That's how we learn. And that, but in my head, I'm like, yeah, that's what you get for trying to teach me, you Jezebel. Yeah, Jezebel's always come in the room trying to teach brothers. Well, brother, think about that. Shut up. You think about it. But anyway, so, sometimes we just don't know, man. And like I said, some of us we're not made of the same thing. We weren't designed for the same reason. And that should be respected and understood. It may not be understood, but it should at least be honored. And regardless of how many systems you see that I speak to or how many languages, I already told you what I am. That's what I am. I'm Anu, right? When I came into this game, y'all heard me breaking down Greek archetypes, Roman archetypes, going through the Vedas, going through the Yoruba, going through I always did that. And the Hebrew. Like I said, the first or second segment I ever did was Eshu and the Tetragrammaton. I did the Orisha and the Kabbalah. I have always spoken about Hebrew, Kabbalistic, and Torah, like from like the first or second segments. But you just heard the Orisha, you heard the magic. Get to the magic. So I'm sharing this now because of the direction that we're going in as a community, and because it's so necessary now. Time is up for being dumb. I can't put it any other nicer way. I probably could, but I'm not going to. Time has expired now for being dumb. Time has expired for dogma. Time has expired for your willful ignorance. Now, if you are truly a shepherd and you are truly patched in and truly plugged in, one of the things about that is that you should be able to warn people of what's coming. That's why, you always hear me talk about people who tell you about this is going to happen and that's going to happen after the fact. They always do that. Their astrology breakdowns after the celebrity dies. I told y'all when it came, before it came in 2020. You know what I'm referring to. I ain't going to say it. I told you in 2019. I said first quarter 2020, there's going to be this thing that's going to happen. So you have to stock up on your real and hard commodities. And then people said, what do you mean? What is that? I said, and then I did another segment. That's when I was sitting outside and the wind kept blowing. I was, I think I was in Jacksonville. I was in Florida. So I want to say Jacksonville. And I was sitting outside in a park. I think I had on a blue shirt. I think it was either blue or red. There's only two colors that really wear anyway: blue, red, white, black. And I said, this is what you need to do because there are floods coming. There's this coming, and there's something big, really big coming in January, and you need to have food and this and water and right. I've always warned you. This is what's coming. I'm warning you again. This whole simple-minded dogma I've been warning you about for years, like when people say, well, what about the restart? Are you from Nigeria? You're not. So knock it off. I'm giving you the tradition and the path and the system for you. Or people want to say, what about ancient Kemet? Are you from that region? And don't give me no spookism. Prove it. For those that I knew, there's a video that I created. It was a teaching. I don't share it publicly, but when people join, they get to watch it. And the name of the video is How the Negro Got Here. And I break it down. This is why you're studying this. I've never shared that here publicly, and I won't. But I break it down. This is why you are learning this particular thing at this time. Don't get distracted with all the other exotic stuff. It doesn't apply. It does not apply. I know that's a hard pill to swallow for some because you want all the exotics, because you were placed here to be a worshiper and a servant. You might as well just go try to find some gold in the ground and make some burnt offerings and keep giving these cats all your stuff. That's not what I'm teaching. That's not what I'm teaching. I have shown you that I've mastered that. So evolve out of that with me here. Come on, I'm going to show you the next level. Look at all the Orisha books on the market now. Look at how it's flooded now. Go to Amazon, you'll see. Look at the videos on YouTube. People talking about Ori now. I'm not going to try to sound cocky or nothing like that, but pay attention. There's always a shadow. Always a shadow. But don't chase the shadow when someone is giving you the current of what's next. This is where it's going next. This is where you need to be placed next. But you're still thinking you have all this time until something crazy happens. Then you're trying to rush and scramble, and it's not sincere. See, that was the science of communion. That's the science of communion. Someone asked me that recently, and I tried to get them to explore it a little bit. But I'm just going to say it. The science of communion is not you eat the bread and the wine and all of that, and you eat Jesus's body. The science of communion is, will you follow me if I give you nothing? That's what it is. You see, when you eat the bread and you drink the wine and you're eating the body of the Savior, okay, but I can't live off of that. But man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word proceeding out of the mouth of Yah. So you can live off of it. Or will you only follow me if I give you a feast? You see? So when you come into ANU, are you committed because this is the truth? Or are you committed because you want some magical spells and rituals so you can get bread, so you can get material things? Or I knew that they into polygyny. I can go there and then I can use that as a justification as to why I need two queens. And then, you cats who come in doing that, you notice you never get two queens. In fact, some of you leave with no queen. Some of you come in on that, and then the woman you try to trick is like, I actually like what they're teaching here, but it's not what you're talking about. I'm going to leave you, but I'm going to stay here. See, communion is, will you be down? Will you be down for the cause? Even when you're not given material riches, will you still be down for the cause? Will you be down to ride? That's the science. So, sometimes you used to hear me on segment and I say, come on, take a ride with me. And then I've seen some of the comments, he went all around the thing just to say this. No, I didn't. Go for the ride. That's why half the times, man, when y'all ask me questions, I already answered that. I already gave you the answer. You wasn't paying attention. Chief, how I do this, I already told you. You're not listening. You know how many things I told you in this segment that people will still turn around and ask? Somebody will turn around after watching this session and say, well, do you believe in the Bible? They'll ask a dumb question like that after what was just said. So I'm saying, I always felt like Islam was the truth. You hear me use the word Islam at one point through this whole segment. I said Muslim. I didn't say nothing about Islam. I mentioned the Quran and I mentioned Muslim. I didn't say nothing about no Islam. I'm telling you, most time, 100% of the time, anything that you would want to ask or any problem you have, I've already given you the answer, but you ain't listening. You too fidgety. You looking over my shoulder, and then when something pop up, hey man, let me ask you this. I already answered it. I already told you. Oh, Chief, man, I've been alone for a while. I want a woman. I want a family. I already told you how to get a family. You don't want to do it. You wasn't listening. I've done whole series on how to get a family. If you even listen to anything I talked about being electromagnetic, you would know how to get a family. Woman, you gotta be magnetic. Man, you gotta be electric. Man, you gotta be positive. Woman, you gotta be negative. That's how you get a family. What does that mean? I already broke down what it means. I broke it down in books, podcasts. I've given you every answer already. You don't have to ask anything else. When you do, at this point, for the most part, now some questions are good. Some. So I'm not going to say, don't ask me nothing. I'm not going to say that. But a lot of them are not. A lot of them are not. And sometimes you ask questions that people have already asked and I've already answered, but you ain't following along. So you want me to jump in where you want me to jump in. So I'll give a better answer. Like this happened recently on Facebook. She blocked me and stuff, kicked me out of her little corny group. But this chick had this group for polygyny or whatever. And she liked me. She told me she liked me. So I'm giving that context. And she was kind of aggressive too with it, which I don't like. So I was not, I mean, I wasn't interested anyway, but she put a question in the group like, what advice would I give to like a single mother who something, so I don't even remember the whole dumb question. And I said, well, the very first thing I would say is to get with the child's father, because that's where the authority comes from. And then outside of that, if that is completely impossible, then you need to get a covering. And she then messaged me privately and was like, no, beloved, that's not what I'm saying, love. Like when they come with all that soft language, a lot of it's slickery. It's just Jezebel energy. And she would always do that. No, dear. No, like, who the F you talking to? Like you feeling too familiar. But no, dear, I'm saying this. Fool, I answered the question, but the question is stupid and it's wicked and it's evil. But I already answered it very intelligently at that. You are not supposed to be a single mother. In fact, there's no such thing as that. You are receiving the fact that you can get into a group and ask, right? You're getting support, but that is not a natural condition. And the answer is go to the Father, but you're probably too hard-headed, too Jezebel, too egotistical to even do something like that. So you're going to pretend like, well, I can't work with him. It's you. You're the jerk that ruined the child. But I'm not saying all that because I'm being kind. But what I'm telling you is that era is ending now. I hate those questions. I've said it before. Don't ask me no single mother questions because that's not even the point. The point is not how do I do this as a single mother. The point is you're not supposed to be single. So your only question should be around how do I get a covering? How do I restore the balance that is supposed to be? And if I say that for some of you and the devil in you immediately starts saying, yeah, but these men, I would, but these men, you are a devil. Stop. Stop. These women out here are not evil. And these men out here are not evil. Just the ones that you deal with. There are beautiful, righteous people here on the planet. But you are such a devil that you only attract more devils. And then you have no accountability. So you complain about the devils as if you're not one of them. So if you ask me a question like, well, how does a single mother stop right there? No, we got to fix that. That's the problem. Because that child, where does their line of spiritual authority come from if they are not in connection with their father? Where does your balance come from? That's why you're online asking dumb questions. And then getting offended because you didn't get the answer that you wanted, which was really you wanted someone to pander to your rebellion. Well, sis, you got to do this because you know you can't trust these men and you got. No, Negro, you can't do that because you were not built to do that. You were not built to govern and head a family. It is a headless family. You are the body. He is the head. You need a head. Plain and simple. Nothing you do is going to work. Everything you do is going to fail because you're not set up properly. That's like me saying, well, you know, me as a single man, how would you give me advice on having a child? Well, if you want a child, you have to have a wife. No. But I'm saying, okay, I don't have a wife though. So in lieu of me not having the woman there, not having a wife, how would I now have a child? What? Well, I guess you could go adopt one, I guess. No, I don't want to adopt. I want to. What you speaking about is, you understand what I'm saying? It's completely illogical. But you have inherited the laws and the logic of your oppressor. That's the weave and the story that you live inside of. So that becomes the acceptable reality to you. It's acceptable for you to be out here with no man. It's acceptable for me to be a bum That's acceptable. But that has, if you are living by the laws of the Most High, then none of that even makes sense to you. But if you are living by Babylon laws, then you want me to tell you how to use spiritual intelligence given to me by the Most High to better navigate the world of Babylon. No, get away from me. No, you don't want to be restored to our laws and our ways. You don't want that. You don't want to hear that. You need to go reconcile with the child's father, or in your case, his multiple fathers. So you out here committing adultery because you still married to the, like, you don't want to hear any of that. Well, I'm having a problem at my son's school. Like, what should I do? Yeah, you're going to keep on having problems. You're going to keep on doing it. And you messed up that child by doing what you did. That's the answer. There's no honor in living outside of the laws. And I'm telling you, the time is up for that. The time is up. And you have so many systems and people out here who coddle that and they support it because they think it's cute. But you know within yourself inwardly how miserable, sad, and lonely you truly are, regardless of what you project online and to other people. You know, because if you have a soul and you're living outside of the universal laws, you're always going to be depressed, sad, and lonely. So you're going to do things to overcompensate. You know it. You can say whatever you want to other people. You can't fool me. Because I'm always the one in the quiet times that they come and they sneak up on the side of it. Chief, right. But say that to everybody else. Be a warning to those young brothers and young sisters who are coming behind you. Let them know what life is really like outside of the garden. Be honest about it. That's like Cain coming back after he was sent away, like, yo, it's popping in Middle Earth. Yo, like, yeah, I got this mark, and they really want to kill me, but yo, it's crazy. You need to come over to where we tell the truth, Kay. Tell the truth, shame devil. You see? So I just wanted to share that along with this Strong's teaching. There are universal understandings across spiritual knowers, and we have to tap into that. And this is the time to do that. Yes, we have to separate and be holy, but you, like the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said, you got to get with your own like, your A-likes. Get with them and do for self. But your A-likes are not just those who profess the same thing per se, and some of you may not have the vision to be able to see where the interconnectedness is. Some will say things like, well, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe Jesus died for your sin? And if you can't say yes to that, they don't want nothing to do with you. But what if I tell you, I do? I do believe in Jesus, but he didn't die for my sins. How about that one? Oh, man. Are you willing? Are you ready to learn? Do you want to learn about who that person really was? Or do you want to play around? Right? If I don't fit into the weave of your story that's been given to you, then you don't want to talk to me. But who gave that to you? How much of it have you audited? How much of it have you decoded? And that's what I urge you all to do out of love. Okay? So I'm going to leave you with that until our next session. We have our retreat coming up pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to seeing those who are coming to the retreat. At the retreat, we'll be getting into a little bit more in Georgia. I keep forgetting the name of that town. I'm sorry. I was about to say it again, and I know I was going to mess it up again. It's at Bomax Farms. I think it's I don't know, Claudesville. So, something, man. We'll be there, though. We'll be there. That's what GPS is for. I don't have to remember. So, yeah, man, I look forward to those of you who will be convening in that space. And as always, I welcome you into the community. Like I said, this is time. I don't really do a whole lot of big recruiting and stuff for ANU like that, because I think the teaching is the recruiting. If it resonates with you, then fill out the form to join and let's have that conversation. Because like I said, I'm warning you, this is the time. And this isn't a like, join or die. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that you got to know some junk. This is the time to know some junk. Yeah, I'll just say that, man. That's the only thing that separated the Elohim from Adoma and Hawa is what they knew. One day you'll figure that out. It ain't about special breathing techniques or nothing like that. What brings you to the place of Elohim or gods is what you know. It's time to know some stuff and stop playing around. That's all. All right. With that, I want to thank you so much for tuning in and for spending this time and going on this journey upside down, all around, eternity. And willfully, like I said, you got something. If you don't have a copy of the ANU Way, go download it. It's free on the website, anulifeglobal.org. And tap in, especially before volume 2 comes out. Tap in so you can get your foundations, which is the subtitle of it, foundations, on volume 1. And I look forward, anything you want to share in the comments, go right ahead. As you can see, I do read them. And Jason, thank you for the comment on the last one. I thought it was pretty cool when he was talking about, I see, I'm not so weird now after all. That was the Ain't It Strange segment that I did. I thought that was a cool comment that he left. But yeah, man, people are going to say we're weird and we're this and we're that, but people don't be knowing. They don't know. Again, audit their story. They're doing what and why. Where'd they get that idea from? And have they tried and proven it? All right. So until such time, this is Chief Yuya signing out from the ANU Nation, ANU Life Global Ministries. I'll see you soon. Shalom.